we go. I knew this was going to be recorded, so hopefully you guys can watch this back. So we will be going through a couple of things at pace. So if you miss anything, then don't worry. Do catch the recording. I want to make sure that there's an opportunity to really go through some questions at the end as well. And if anyone's wanting to pay more attention to any of the sales training I do, then I've just put in the chat a link to my Instagram, which everything is on there. But today, what I really want to go through is I want to go through a couple of frameworks. One, the framework of how I run high ticket sales calls, and two, the framework of how I handle objections. So I have personally closed multiple hundreds of thousands every month as a high ticket closer. I've worked in a lot of different spaces. I've been in sales for 11 plus years. I've had days where I've closed millions. So this framework that I have created, I've used in a lot of different spaces. And I emphasize the fact that it's a framework, not a script. So what this is going to be is a structure that you can follow to run sales calls. But the most important thing about frameworks is understanding the why, not the what. So when I talk to my students, I always say you go through an evolution of understanding that it's the what, then it's the how, and then it is the why. So that what is literally understanding what you say step by step. And when people learn these frameworks for the first time, when they're in sales for the first time, it's very rigid. But sometimes it has to be, because you have to learn your structures like muscle memory. If you are ever on a sales call, and if people can maybe raise a hand if you're on camera, or maybe put a yes in the chat or a Y in the chat, if you've ever done this, have you ever been on a sales call and you thought in your head, oh shit, what do I say next? What question am I meant to ask next? What's the next part I'm meant to go through? Have I missed that? Have I done that? I'm getting a lot of nods. So yeah, yes, yeah, we all done that. That means that you're still stuck in that what phase, that you are so consciously linked to what you need to say that you are no longer engaging into the conversation. And this is where most people in sales go wrong, is they're so fixated on what they need to do to make a sale that they forget that they're part of a conversation. And has everyone heard, again, thumbs up, wave, nod, yes in the chat, has everyone heard of active listening in sales? Probably pushed the most in sales. We all should have heard that, right? Well, I am an advocate to go a step further from that, because active listening, all you're doing is you're trying to show the other person you're listening. And there's more emphasis on trying to show them that you're listening than actually listening to them. And again, if you are locked in your own head about, oh, what do I need to say next? Oh, am I listening? Have I nodded in the right way? This is why these sales calls go wrong. So these are the fundamental components to how to put these frameworks together. But again, you've got to understand that your frameworks, they do need to go through a stage of being rigid. And it is up to you to practice these things religiously so you no longer have to think of them. When I was a property broker in Dubai, we would have to go through a 3-week stage of training for them to let us out into the real world and sell. Now, I finished that training in 3 days, because the moment I got placed with my area, which was the Palm Jumeirah, I got assigned the building types, and they said, right, what we have to know off by heart is every square foot, every view, every building name, every apartment type. And I literally plastered on my wall every single fact and feature about that area and recited it until it was muscle memory, and I didn't have to think about it anymore. So I could be more engaged in conversation than on facts and figures. So that's what we need to do. You need to have these frameworks, but then you need to practice them. You need to drill them. You need to have them so they are absolute muscle memory. And then you will go on to the second stage, which is how you are delivering the framework. And that is where sales mastery really begins. My favorite clip in sales was the Wolf of Wall Street selling penny stocks for the first time. And it's something I use as an example all the time. I'm seeing some smiling faces. You know what I'm talking about. Just the way he delivers that. That's the only reason he sells. But it is such a lost art in sales nowadays. People are so focused on this new way of selling. Oh, I need to ask really emotional questions and get really deep. And you try and be a therapist. You don't try and be a salesperson. Yes, you need to dig into that stuff, bring it to the surface. But if the emphasis is just trying to make your prospect feel bad and then take them through this really boring pitch, No wonder you're not going to close high ticket deals. So again, there has to be that element of how you deliver, how you come across, your sales charisma. And when you are getting so overwhelmed by, oh, what do I need to say? What's next? That's when you can unlock that. But the true mastery, where it ends, is in the why. And that's what I'm going to talk to you today about, is why we ask these questions, why this framework exists in the way it does, what we need out of each stage rather than what the stage is. So my sales framework, which I majority close one call close, not 5,000 follow-ups, as some people like to do, is a 4-step process, nice and simple. It is your introduction, it is your discovery, it is your pitch, and then it is your close. Now, 45 minutes to an hour is usually where these calls exist. Introduction is usually 3 to 5 minutes long. Definitely do not take more than 5 minutes under any circumstance. 3 minutes is still probably a little bit too long in some cases. Then it is your discovery phase, which should be about 20 to 25 minutes. Now, this is where I see most people in sales go wrong. Your pitch should only be around 5 to 10 minutes long. If there is a case that it's 10 minutes long because there's a lot to it, absolutely fine. But it is a complete reversal of old school sales where you just go on, you just pitch people to death and you hope they buy. Your pitch needs to be short, punchy, and to the point. It needs to create value and not bore your prospects to death. So it needs to be short, but it needs to have the right things in it. And then finally, your close. Your close will take up the remainder of the call. And I have honestly been on an hour and a half close of objections till I got someone through. And I've also closed in, my quickest sale selling a 5K product as a pay in full was 17 minutes all the way through. So again, the only reason that happens is because I understand what I need out of each stage, not that I need to stick to this rigid framework. Yeah, we got a question on that?
Yeah, sorry, Connor. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, and how many minutes for each, please?
So the introduction should be around 3 minutes long.
Number 1, introduction.
Yes, 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
2 is discovery, 20 to 25 minutes.
Discovery for prospects, what they
Yeah.
will discover.
Yeah, we're going to break all these down, don't worry. Number 3 is pitch, 5 to 10 minutes. And close is remainder of call. So each of these steps has different stages within them, which we are going to break down. So the first and sometimes the most important, because if you get this wrong, you ruin the rest of the call, is your introduction. So the first thing I like to do on an introduction and my first step in a sales call is simple. It is an icebreaker. It is understanding the point of a prospect that sometimes sales calls can be intimidating. Or if they're not, you're so bored to death by them that as soon as you log on and you see that salesperson, you're like, ugh. So if you can just break the ice a little bit, if you can just warm that call up, and honestly, mine is like one question long sometimes. It doesn't have to be too deep. Remember, you've only got 3 minutes on your introduction. One question is enough. And to the point that I made earlier, how you say this is so much more important than what you say. There are a lot of sales trainers who say, "Oh, never say how are you on a sales call the first thing." That's bollocks. Of course you can say how are you. It's just you've got to say it with authority. You've got to say it with some energy. Not too much, but hey man, how's it going? You all good? Hi, how are you? Yeah, all good. So I really want to get into the call now. Again, your tonality needs to be the thing you are emphasizing throughout this entire sales call. So think of 2 or 3 questions that are just your go-to questions that you can just have a bit of fun with right from the start. Then it brings us into our frame, which is our next step in our introduction. Now, this is probably one of the most important parts of the entire sales call because a frame is your rule set. It is you setting the perception of what you go through. And I've just done some sales training with someone where he was working in a B2B offer selling funding solutions, and he was going through a set of questions with his prospect in the discovery. trying to understand what they'd done for a living alongside the business they wanted to launch. And she was so hesitant to give him the answers, so reluctant, because she's there to discuss business finance. It's like, why are you asking me this stuff? Because he didn't frame it. She didn't understand why they were going through those sorts of questions. But if you start that conversation with, well, look, as you know, we do one-on-one coaching and we really work with a few people and we want to make sure we're working with the right people. So I'd actually love to just get to know yourself a bit, if that's okay with you. Cool. Well, look, tell me, what do you actually do for work alongside, wanting to grow this business? Then they understand why you're asking these questions. It's up to you to set the stage for the line of questioning. So that's what we do right from the start. Because if you don't do this, who's had it? Again, raise hands. Give me the yes. Give me the thumbs up. Who's had it on a sales call where you just kind of casually start, you kind of have a bit of a conversation, and then the prospect takes over? They're like, question, question, question. How much did it? What did you do? What are the results? Yeah. It's really awkward. It's because you don't set the frame. That's why it happens. So even if you have the most bullish type of prospect, this is how to keep them under control. So that frame really should include a few things. The first thing is your offer overview. It is that big, shiny statement about what you do and the results you produce, who you do it for, what problems you help them to overcome. So me, I help people to become high-ticket closers. So I say, awesome, well, look, how much do you know about what I do? And I ask that question, so I've got a nice natural segue into my frame. It doesn't feel like I'm being so direct and salesy. So it's like, what do you know about what I do? And if they say I know nothing, I'm like, cool, let me break it down. And if they're like, I know everything you do, I can say, yeah, well, look, as you know, it doesn't matter. I'm not asking that question for any other reason to set my frame up properly. So what I do is I help people to become highly successful closers. People are stuck in a day job, they don't earn enough money, where they can scale past 5 figures a month. But then we're gonna give something unique about our offer. We're gonna build some value. I say, but I'm not a course. I am a full mentorship program. The only way I can do that for people is if I work with them one-on-one to give them what they personally need to make it in this space. Then we're going to navigate to an urgency builder. If you are not setting any form of urgency on your calls, you will not overcome any objections. Because when you're in that battle with someone and you want them to go ahead, but they don't, what's the reason they should go ahead? If you haven't got a valid reason, like you haven't built some urgency, then you're not going to overcome it. So everything is explained from the previous step. That's what you'll notice with these frames. I do this big magical thing, but the only way I do that is because I'm special. And that means that I don't work with everyone. And I only have a few spaces to work with me. So that's your frame. Setting that offer overview, building your value, something special about you, and then setting some urgency. And then that will flow effortlessly into your agenda. So that's why today I would love to just understand a bit more about yourself, what you actually want to achieve in this space, and what's stopping you doing that right now. If I then think I can help you, big if there, then I'll be able to go through my program, go through all of your questions, and go into it in as much detail as we need. And then if you think it's the right fit, we could even get set up today. How does that sound? Simple as that. Everything, again, like I told you about the pitch, it's short, it's punchy, it's to the point, and most things in sales, less is more. And you go over this big, salesy, over-the-top agenda. Right, so what I want to do today is I want to really learn about, like, another salesman. But as you'll notice, mine is flowing. It flows effortlessly together, and everything explains the previous thing. So again, when you've set that frame that the only way you can ask questions is if I think you're the right fit, you have something to root back to if you do get those really pushy people. It's like, hey, well, look, as I said, I just need to know a little bit more about you, if that's okay. And then, yeah, 100%, we can figure out how this will work. Is that okay? Cool. Well, look, like I said, and then we go back in. So that is setting the frame. That's setting the rule set for the rest of the call. It is your icebreaker, your frame, and your agenda, but it flows into one thing. And then again, we get them on there. And then it is our discovery phase, the most important part of the sales call. So the first and most important way that we start this is a context builder. And you've probably heard this before, start with why. Why are you here on the call with me today? But again, what we're trying to do is we're not trying to take my framework and just copy it word for word because it won't work that way. We have to understand the why behind each stage and what we need out of it. So the reason I called it a context builder is because we needed to build some context. So if I ask someone why they're on the call with me, they will give me context why it's important to them that they're looking into this thing, how much they've given, and I can see how bought in that person is from the first step in my discovery. Because if I go to someone, oh, cool, so why did you book the call with me today? Well, I don't know, I just want to see what you do. I'm like, whoa, okay, right, I'm going to break this guy down ASAP. Because if he's going to maintain that attitude, I don't want him on the call because he can't close. But if I give someone that why question, they spill their guts to me for 5 minutes. I know that they respect my authority. They know I can help them and they're here to be listened to. And I know what's important to them because why is a very open-ended question. So they are going to highlight the most important things to them and you must remember them. If you are not good at remembering these things, because again, you're probably thinking of too many different things, just write them down. It's as easy as that. This is a big tip for anyone who's kind of newer to sales. When you have too many things to think of, you're not present in that conversation, but give yourself a break by literally just having it on a pen and paper. Now, the worst thing you can do is everyone seeing me on a gallery view, or is it I speak and I'm taking up the whole screen? If I'm taking up the whole screen, let me show you what it looks like when you're on a call with a closer and they're looking at a script on the other screen. So yeah, today I would love to just go through a little bit more about yourself and what we're really, it's shifty. It looks very untrustworthy. So if I'm constantly glancing out the corner of my eye with these lizard eyes, they're going to think something is wrong. But if I start like this, yeah, so cool. Well, actually, I've just got another screen open, by the way, and I'd just like to be making some notes just so I don't miss anything. Is that all right? Yeah, cool. So anyway, what we were talking about earlier is you said something about, again, if I'm purposely looking, I'm not just glancing over, then they know what I'm doing and they have no problem with it. So if you are still in that earlier stage where you don't know that framework like the back of your hand, write it down and ask yourself the questions that you need the answers to. So rather than go through all the questions you need to ask that prospect, say, start with why. Have you got context? And you'll know what questions to ask to achieve that, to get that out. So that doesn't necessarily, by the way, have to be, why did you book this call? Think of the ways that you can start building some context, start finding out what's important to this person. But don't try and jump too far ahead in the framework. Some people say, I've heard people go, right, what's your biggest challenge right now reaching this goal? And it's like, well, you're jumping in mid-call. So you're going to be you're missing a lot of things there. And if you are doing outbounds, if someone hasn't booked a call in with you, it's okay, why did you accept the call with me today? Doesn't matter. So that is our first stage of discovery. Next, it is going to be our current position. So the first thing that we really need to do is we need to establish what position our prospect is in, because all sales is a state change. It is as simple as that. So the way that you need to think about it, very, very simply, if it loads, there we go. So your prospects are here in position A. They want to be here in position B. And there is a reason that they can't do this by themselves. And this is where you come into it. So it's our job to understand this state change of sales. And the rest of the framework is digging into these points. So we'll come back to that. But that is as simple as you guys need to think of it. So the first thing we need to find out is, what is their position A? And there are 3 layers that we go through in position A. It is position, it is problem, and it is pain. Now, here is the nuance in this. Stop listening to all these half-ass sales trainers who keep telling you to dig into consequence all the time, to really go through emotion all the time, because sometimes it doesn't work. When you are dealing with a high authority business owner who needs their ads fixed, they're not going to tell you about them spending so much time on their business that it's taken away time from his wife. He is not going to be interested in that conversation with you. What he is interested in is that you can understand and have the solution for his logical problems. So that type of sales call is going to be more problem-based. And if you can find a way to get to some of the pain, it's going to help you. But if you try and emphasize digging into pain when it's not really so much about the pain, then you're going to push the prospect away. So again, understand those 3 layers and then start to understand what the most likely scenarios are for the type of people you're selling to. Because we do want to try and hit all, but there's definitely going to be something we emphasize. So the way that we do that is usually asking questions about their position will reveal their problems. Asking questions about their problems will reveal their pain. So think about how the positional questions relate to your offer, because it's essentially what you solve. So when we're asking these sorts of questions, when I help people to become high ticket closers, I'm helping them to move away from a job. So obviously I need to know what job they do. I'm helping them to make more money. So I need to know what money they make. I help them to get more time back. So I need to know how much time they spend at work. I need to ask the right questions to reveal the problems that I can solve. So when you're running ads for someone, if you're an agency, then what are they doing? Like, what's the basis of all ads? It's client acquisition. So what do their current systems look like? How many clients do they get on board? Do they know their numbers? Do they know their ROI? Do they spend anywhere else? So we need to ask the right questions to understand their position first. Then we need to ask the right questions to get into the problems. And then that extra layer that we need to start understanding is how much pain is felt from those problems. And again, some people have more emotional pain, and that's what we can dig into. But some people have more of that kind of logical pain. So the way to think about it is when we're going into those pain questions, what is the severity of these problems? So if it is business, how much do those problems affect that business? How long have they been suffering with this problem? What else have they tried to fix this problem? Why didn't it work? Why do they feel that what we do could be the right fit? So we need to learn to get deep, but again, it's understanding your audience. I like to break calls not into B2B and B2C anymore. I break them down into aspiring and current. You're speaking to people who are aspiring to do the thing that you want to do, or you speak to people who are currently doing it, just not at the level that they want to get to. So the people who are current, they are more problem aware, and they want to see that you understand and can solve their problems. The aspiring people, it's all about that change. So it needs to be more about why they even want to change in the first place. What's wrong with their current position? How much pain is felt from them being in that situation? So once we have established that position A is something that they want to move away from, there's enough motivation pushing them to want to make that change. Then we need to understand what position B looks like. So this is goals, this is desired position, this is all these things. But people are so used to these very basic goal questions. Why is getting to 10K a month important to you? We can't be asking these questions anymore. So what I do instead is I establish what this position is and I try and paint it out to be as real as possible. Because when you have big goals, but they don't really feel real, there's no real milestone or roadmap to get there, well, then it's just a dream. And people don't really want to chase dreams. They just like to think about them. But when there's a clear goal that they have, 100% confidence is reachable, there's more likelihood that they feel to get there. That is when they're going to be more serious about getting there. In the same way that I think about, if I gave you an example where there was an opportunity to get a $10 million return on investment, but I still don't take that opportunity, you're going to think I'm mad, right? But I don't play the fucking lottery because the likelihood that I win is very, very low. So what we also need to build alongside a clear goal is building the likelihood to get there. So again, I'll use what I do as an example. So when I break down, what are your goals as high ticket close? It's always about 10K a month or 15K a month. So I was like, cool, well, look, let's break down the numbers. How do we get there? Then I break down the average deal size of high ticket, 5 to 20K, but let's be conservative. Let's say 5K. I break down close rates in this industry. You should be 1 in 3, but people will accept as low as 20%. So let's say you want to get to 10K a month. You're closing on a 5K offer and you're taking 10% commission. Well, that means all you have to make is 20 sales over the course of that month. All that means is you take 100 sales calls over the course of that month. So what we have to do is we have to obviously get you to the level where you're closing 20%. And we also need to get you an offer that can give you at least 100. And that's how I'm going to get you there. So again, it's not like the exact blueprint, but it is enough that they feel more confident that I can actually help them get there. So again, like let's use ads. If you're trying to help someone to scale and do what? What are their revenue targets? Where do they actually want to get to? If someone says, I can run your ads and get you more clients, that's great. But what if someone said, I can get you more clients, I can get you 30 in the door, I can scale your revenue up by 3 times what it is today, and that's how I'm going to help you reach 100K a month. And the reason I'm going to be able to do that is because if you're spending 5K a month on ads with me, typically the conversion rates on that are we're going to be able to see 500
Thank you for
people.
calling the Health Insurance Marketplace direct line. Please enter your ID number.
God, I didn't know I was that boring. So when we break down the figures, we build a bit of a roadmap, we manage expectations as well. The goals that we set feel real and they feel like something these people want to walk towards. So that is what we need to focus on in position B. Now, the next part, so important. It is roadblocks. Now, sometimes when you are talking about current position, you're talking about their problems, you will talk about the roadblocks because the roadblocks are the things that are stopping them getting there by themselves. So again, understand that these frameworks are conversations. So if you talk about different things in different stages, don't block that conversation, carry on that conversation, and then come back to it at the right stage. Now, roadblocks, the reason that these things are so important is because if there are no roadblocks, there is no need for you. Because people don't like spending money. So if they feel they can do it by themselves, they will. So you need to establish clear roadblocks because you need to build a need for you. And what you need to understand is the logical pillars of what you do. So for me, it's sales training and it's placement. So when I say, cool, well, that's your goal as a closer, like, do we feel like we've got the right plan in place? Do you think you can get there by yourself? No? Okay, well, I mean, let's break that down. I mean, what that really comes down to is obviously sales, right? Do you feel like you can close these type of deals? I mean, if I gave you one tomorrow, would you close it? Okay, cool. So we'd probably need some sales training then. And I'm thinking in the back of my head, well, I do that. And the next is, well, obviously you got to get in the right offer, right? And I'm thinking in the back of my head, well, I do that. So again, think about the things that you do, categorize them into these big kind of stages, because that is also what you go through in the pitch. So that's why you've got to clearly understand how to block and categorize what you do. So when I was selling when I was a high ticket closer, I sold a program to help people to build marketing agencies. I also coached in that program and taught them how to sell. So my pillars on that were sales, marketing, and scale. Or I called it sales, service, and scale because I love alliteration. So it's like, cool, look, do you feel like you can sign clients right now? No? Okay, well, look, let's break that down. What part do you think you're struggling with? And again, I'm building a need for what I do. I'm showing them that I understand their business, where I come in, how I'm going to help them. Then it's right. What about delivery? If I gave you 100 clients today, do you think you could handle them? No? Okay, great. Well, what about scaling your business? So again, understand what you do as those big categories and check it when you're going through roadblocks. It will build a need for what you do. We need to establish where you are right now, where you want to be, and why you can't get there by yourself. That's the step-by-step on a discovery. Nice and simple. But the next and last part of your discovery, personally, it's not something I really see a lot of people do in sales calls. But for me, it's been the most fundamental change, how I got from 30% close rate to 75%. And I call it qualification. So your qualification is essentially the last bit in your discovery where you preempt objections, because obviously you're going to go into the pitch. And when you pitch, you don't hold as much power. If you set a clear frame that the only way you're going to say what you do is obviously if they're the right fit, all these things, you will hold power over discovery. And it's not up to you to try and build this person out, sell them a dream, try and fit everything that you do around them to make it seem like a good fit. It's up to you to genuinely see if you can help these people because they appreciate the honesty. They respect the authority. But qualification is the final stage you take someone through, and it's where you get them primed to be closed. It's where you get them to realize that they need to be serious about this. They need to act with urgency. And if there are any preempting objections that I need to do, this is where I do them. So I'm going to go through my main two ways that I qualify people, and you can take that and adapt it to yours. But I want to talk about the preempting objections. So the way you preempt objections is based on two things: frequency and intensity. The more frequent you get an objection, the more intense it is, the earlier in your process you need to handle it. Give you an example. I've helped a offer who sold social media packages to young women or women, and the biggest objection we used to get was the partner objection. So I told them to add it to their application form. Before we have this call, all decision makers must be on. And we even mentioned it again early in the call. And that eliminated that objection tenfold. So the more frequent and the more intense, deal with it earlier in the process. But think about your common ones. This will be the best place to do it. I never pitch someone unless I've financially qualified them, either in the application form or before I pitch them, because I don't want to waste my time. And it's a very hard objection to overcome when someone says, look, I love what you do, but I physically don't have any money in my account. Can't even put a deposit down. You kind of run out of options there. So the two main qualification points that I have to build the right emotion to get this person ready to be closed is commitment and urgency. Because if they're not committed to make this change, to do this thing, to achieve this result, then what? They're not going to spend 5K plus, are they? If they don't understand they have to act with urgency, then they're not going to want to go ahead now. You're going to get the, oh, I need to think about it. The worst objection in sales. So the commitment question. What you need to understand about this is a serious moment, and your delivery is the most important part. And this needs to be pre-framed before you deliver it. Because essentially what I'm going to ask this person is, out of 10, how committed are you to actually reaching that goal? Actually becoming a closer and doing 10K a month? Actually scaling your business? Whatever it is. So again, we need to pre-frame that. So I've done it in a million ways because, again, I understand the why behind this. So I never say it scripted. I never say it in the same, but you might have to script it out first, practice it till it feels right, and then you'll deliver it better. But it will be something like this. And it flows, again, it flows. Everything that I do transitions from the last stage. It flows from roadblocks. So what I say is like, hey, what do you think is going to stop you from reaching that goal? Oh, it's sales, oh, it's placement, oh, it's this and that. Okay, cool. Anything else? No. Well, look, one thing that I've seen be probably the biggest reason people don't reach that point is honestly, it's just how serious they take this. I've worked with people who come in with 10 years plus of sales experience and they don't make it. And that's because they just weren't really committed to making that happen. And you know, it's honestly something that I'm really wary of taking people on board now. So for yourself, you know, if there is this guaranteed path to, you know, become a closer, do 10K a month, honestly, like, I mean, hey, maybe give me like a number so I know exactly where you're at. Out of 10, like, how committed do you feel you're going to be to actually reaching that point? You know, I almost say, like, I always make it out like I've made it up on the spot because I don't want it to feel like the salesy question. But every time my guys come to me and they say, oh, I keep asking that and everyone keeps telling me a 6, every time it's because they're delivering it like a robot and people know what you're doing. So delivery is everything. Now, the next part, you just need to think of a way to preempt that. I need to think about objection, that the time objection. And I always say something to the effect, again, don't copy me word for word, but think of the principle behind this. Like, well, I mean, the practicalities of you being a closer, though, you know, growing this business, doing X, Y, Z goal, really comes down to, you know, what I like to call entrepreneurial urgency. Because, you know, if you're working with us, what we're going to be pushing you on is to do more stuff faster, because that's the reason a lot of people take so long on their goals. So, I mean, at the moment, what do you think like the distance is between when you have an idea and when you actually execute on that idea? Do you think you're more of a kind of like a bit of a procrastinator, or do you think you're more like one of these action takers who just get stuff done straight away? Now, what I like to do here is the trait call out. I like to paint out this. I like to identify who I want this prospect to be by giving them the option of a really bad one and a really good one. And what do you think they do all the time? Oh, yeah, of course I'm an action taker. Oh, well, that's something I can use in objection handling. Thanks for giving me that one. And I even put the cherry on the top and I say, cool, love that, man. Well, look, if you were to work with us, you would be working with people who kind of push you to be more urgent. Are you comfortable with that? Yeah, of course I am. I just use that in objection handling. So many objections I've overcome by saying, hey, remember earlier when I said we're going to have to push you to be more urgent, but only when it's going to be to make the right decision? Well, that moment's here. So urgency, them actually carrying out, if it was an agency, the big thing is, we're going to be working with you. We're going to be asking for things. Like the only way these campaigns work is if we're asking you for stuff and it comes back straight away. Like I want to make sure that I am really there to scale your business, but you need to meet me halfway. So if we were working together, is that something you'd be comfortable with? Us kind of pushing you to kind of do stuff more quickly so we can scale your business. Doesn't matter what your offer is, there'll always be a way to deliver that. And then finally, I say, cool, well, look, I just want to make sure, obviously, we're in the right position to do that. I mean, really, that comes down to three things. It's the time, it's the effort, and the money. So time-wise, again, like if you're selling a done-for-you offer, this won't work. It doesn't matter because time, obviously, you're saving them, and then emphasize that. But if it's done with you or something like that, time, I mean, I'm going to need you to put at least 15 hours a week into this. Is that something you can do? Yeah, of course. I mean, effort. I mean, hey, you told me you're 100% committed, so I have no problem with effort. And last thing is, financially. Now, this is so important. I want you to highlight this when I go through. Financial qualifications only work when you value pad them. A qualification sandwich of value. You need to start with value. You need to put the qualification in, then you need to end with value. So it's like, well, look, obviously to invest in yourself to actually, reach 10K a month as a closer, actually get away from your day job. I mean, there's going to be investment, right? But it really ranges anywhere between 2 to 5K, depending on what you kind of need. So if we could build you an absolute guaranteed roadmap to become a closer where you knew you're going to be doing that in 90 days, is that something you feel like you could invest into right now? I want to sandwich that painful give me money statement with value. Again, delivery is everything. That is how you financially qualify people. Now, also what you'll notice is I had a scale. So the scale is very, very important. Now, I'm a massive advocate of an anchor price and a price drop on a sales call. My price is 5K, but I'm going to tell everyone it's 7.5 because I need a logical reason why they go ahead on the call with me there and then. And you don't have to always do this. You can lean on the fact that you have small spaces. You can lean on the fact that, that they need to do that, but there needs to be some urgency builder there. And I always find the price drop is the best thing. So my pricing scale, when I financially qualify someone, is always the top end of my pricing anchor. So when I close, like if my offer was 3K, I would always say 1.5 to 5 or something to that effect, because the top end of where I put the anchor price is 5, and I say if you go ahead right now it would be free. But then also you've got to appreciate if you have any payment plans, installments, and basically the bottom end of that scale needs to be the bare minimum this person needs in their bank to be able to go ahead with you today. Because if they don't have it, it's better to deal with that objection there and then when there's not this big scary price hanging over them, and even disqualify them if they don't have the money. Because all you're going to do is waste your own time, your own energy on the rest of the call. So if someone says, I haven't got it, I always say, okay, cool. Well, look, I mean, even the bottom end, how far off are you? What's your ability to get more finances? And then I'll go into objection handling mode. I'll use analogies. The analogy I always use is that, hey, look, I fully appreciate that, but you're speaking to a guy who was $1.5 grand in his overdraft, but still managed to get 20 grand out for his first business. And I lost 19 grand of that. I only made a K back after 2 years. So trust me, I know what that's like. But like I said, if you are truly committed to something, that you will make it work. So we're not asking you to invest in something like a car that's going to be a depreciating asset. What we're asking you is to invest into something that's going to get you more money. So if we can't go through that short-term sacrifice for the next 2-3 months, then we're not going to have the right mentality to make anything like this work. So like I said, man, trust me, I've been there. But unless we can realize this, because this is something you're going to have to tell people, unless we realize this, we're not going to be able to reach that point. And like I said, I'm not taking money off you right now. I would never expect you to pay me unless you were 100% confident that I'd be able to do that. But like I said, I'm going to build you a roadmap to do this in 90 days, where you are going to be making more money, where you are going to be able to finally get out of this hole. But that's the problem, right? We're in a position where we can't even afford a grand. Do you want to stay in that position? So I'll enter my objection handling mode straight away. Because if I can't overcome an objection when there's not even a fucking price over my head, I'm definitely not going to have that objection after I pitch. I would rather disqualify someone than try and pitch someone, go into half an hour of objection handler and never get them round. So that is the end of the discovery. So the next part is our pitch. Now the pitch is broken down into 3 stages. It is your offer overview, very similar to the one you said at the start of your call. So you need to start with that big, powerful statement about what you do and the results you produce. Now, what I like to do after that is I like to go through trust builders. Hey, don't take my word for it. Let me show you. And I have literally a success wall with about 30 people that I scroll through. And I try, when you're doing trust builders, what you need to do is you need to match them to the closest person to them. If they have a similar business or an identical business or they're in a similar position, make sure you go through them. But I want to start with this big statement. I want to start with social proof and evidence that I do actually create that. And then when I get them nice and excited, that's when I transition. So, well, look, let me show you how I'm going to do it for you. And the thing about pitches is that it cannot be a one size fits all. You cannot pitch the same pitch for different prospects because people might have the same problem, but they might need a different solution. You know, I did some live sales training at a gym branch and I went through all of their branches and taught all of their gym members how to sell. And we laid out on a board all the problems that their members might have and all the solutions. And, you know, big ones, confidence, lack of knowledge, things like this. But all the solutions they had, qualified PTs, helpful staff, classes, transformation plans, or confidence issue might be dealt with in a class from one person. But another person, that might be with their worst fear. It might be the PTs, it might be the staff, it might be the community. So just because someone has the same problem doesn't mean they need the same solution. So it's up to you to try and match the right thing to the right person. But that means your pitch has to be unique. So the way I pitch is I just take someone through a journey of how I take them from where they are right now to where they want to be. So we remember the state change of sales. I was hoping it was still going to stay there. Maybe not. So what your pitch needs to be is just that journey. It needs to start here, where they are. And you need to take them through the step-by-step of how you get them to here. But where people go wrong in pitches is you bore your prospects to death. Again, punchy. And the way I like to do this is, everyone heard of USPs, right? In sales? Unique selling points. This is the reason that most people don't sell, because they rely on unique selling points. If all it took to make a sale was a few facts and features, then a website would be able to sell. But it doesn't. So what we need to do instead of USP is UPS. We need to do unique problem solvers rather than unique selling points. So what that looks like is the problem is X, that's why we do Y, so you can achieve Z. Look, the big problem is that people don't know how to be placed in remote sales. So that's why we take you through this big stage to get you set up and positioned properly so you can actually stand out, and that's how we're going to place you. Rather than, right, so we get into the program, and what we do is we go through this module, it's set up. Here you're going to learn how to do X, you're going to learn how to do Y. Then after that, we go into board. People have very short attention spans, especially nowadays. And they're only really going to remember the last thing you said. One of my favorite quotes from Maya Angelou was that it doesn't matter what you do or what you say, it matters about how you make people feel. And that is the exact same thing you need to have in sales. So your pitch needs to be the journey of A to B. It needs to be broken down into parts and string together. So again, people have more chance to remember all of it. You remember a story, you don't remember 5 random bits of information. So think about it like this. If that is your pitch, break it down into milestones or stages. And maybe a good thing would be to do is to attach them to the pillars you went through when you went through roadblocks. So what I do is I tell people about how I get them trained in sales, then I get them placed into an offer, and I coach them throughout the process. So what was I checking for when I go through roadblocks? How do you find sales? Building a need for that big thing that I go through in my pitch. Do you feel comfortable about in place? No. Well, it's a big issue in the industry. Building a need for the thing I do. All of these things are linked together. But if you have 3 stages and you have 3 parts to each stage, everything has to be an explanation of the wider goal of how you help A to B. So it's like I help people go from stuck in a sales job to freedom as remote sales. The way I do that is I train them how to close high ticket deals. I get them placed in an offer and I give them the coaching and support even after they're placed to make sure that they continue with their success. So what I do in sales is I teach them a better way how to sell. I call it new age sale because the problem is that most people use very old tactics in this industry, and which is why they don't close any higher than 20%. But the reason I closed at 75% was because I used new age sales. So I'm explaining a thing here, which explains the thing here, which explains the thing here. I'm conscious of the time. I'm trying to rush through this without missing any bits of detail. But again, hopefully you can break that down. But the last thing I wanted to go over before we do run out of time today is the close. Obviously, being able to close. There's a very simple and effective 3-step close that I use, which is I finish the pitch and I say, have you got any questions? I really want to try and bring out as much questions as possible, and I want to go through them. The next thing is a value confirmation. So important. Write it in big, bold letters. Have you got any more questions? No. Well, if you haven't got any more questions and you've seen everything I do, how confident, like give me a number out of 10. How confident are you that I can help you to achieve the things that we want to achieve? And if you have anything under a 9, you need to pick that apart. Do not leave that until you've got it. So that person has no more questions. They fully believe that you're going to be able to help them. And the next thing is just getting them closed. Confirmation closed. Awesome. So are we ready to do this then? Simple as that. Are we ready to do this? Let's get set up. And then when they've agreed, which they should do, the onboarding process, paying the money, all of that is just a formality. It's just a formality. Cool. Well, look, to get set up then, and you treat it like this. And this is where I use my anchor price as well. So cool. Well, look, to get set up, it's nice and simple. I mean, the investment to join the program is going to be 6K. Now wait for half a second. And that's just going to be everything we went through. It's going to be all the sales training. It's going to be getting you placed, guaranteed to get placed. And it's going to be all the one-on-one with me. So I'm just kind of like bullet pointing a few things. So I want that 6K to sink in a little bit. Then I'm going to wait a second or so. Hey, but if I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, I am more concerned about the person than anything else. And I've always found that the people who just are raring to go, they get started straight away. They tend to make a lot better students. So if you're able to get started with me right now, I really want to incentivize that. So rather than 6K, it would only be 4K. But if you can't get set up now, no problem at all. Just be the normal price of 6K. And then shut the fuck up. Do not talk. I have waited in silence for 5.5 minutes before. And when I don't get someone respond to me in more than 20 seconds, I do this. And just yeah, take your time. I will disengage. I'll look to the side. I won't say anything. They are not beating me. 5.5 minutes. Don't care. And that is my 3-step close. So I think that draws us to the end of this session. Sorry we didn't go through the objection side of things. Hopefully, hey, maybe I can be on another one with you guys and go through that on another session, but I hope that helps. Again, remember that it's not about just going through this rigidly step by step. It is a flowy conversation. The more you can get that into your muscle memory, remember that framework off by heart, the more engaged you're going to be in a conversation. You can start affecting how you deliver these things, start being a real person. And then it comes to the mastery of the why you do all these things. We frame the call so that we have that rule set and they stick to the flow of conversation we intend. We go for the why question because we need to build context. What's more important to this person? We go through current position because we need to find out what this person's position is, if they have the problems we can solve, and if they're in enough pain that they're actually going to be motivated to make a change. Then we go through desired position because we need to understand if their goals are something we can help them to reach, and we need to build a bit of expectation and a roadmap to them so they feel that it's actually real. Then roadblocks, we need to build a need for what we do, because if they don't have the roadblocks we can solve, then they're not going to go through this. We are an irrelevant part of that process. Then we go through qualification. We need to make sure this person is serious about making a change. We need to make sure that they actually want to make that change now. We need to preempt any objections. Then we go through that pitch. We need to paint out that journey, start to finish, of how we're going to help this person to go from position A all the way to position B. And then we close what we're here to do. So I hope that helps everyone. Cool. Well, I do have to shoot because I have another coaching session with my guys. But again, hope everyone really enjoyed that. Last time, I'll put my Instagram if anyone wants any more in here. And then hopefully I may even be back to go through the objection framework. But yeah, really good session, guys. All the best.
Thanks, Connor.